God, in His wisdom, gave us the ability to have children. Children, the Bible says, are a heritage or a gift from the Lord. In Malachi, God was angry with the children of Israel because of the amount of divorces that they were engaging in. And His anger was because He gave the children to the parents so the parents could create a godly line, a godly seed. That's really what it's about. So children are a gift from the Lord to us. And really the bottom line really is that we're supposed to give them back to God by the way we train them and teach them. You know, and I know the home is the farm club for the society. The home is the farm club for the community, for the neighborhood, for a nation, for the church, for every source of human involvement. And the quality of these institutions rests solely or to some extent greatly on the way children are reared in the homes. We've all heard this statement, the hands that rock the cradle rock the world. That is so true. That is so true. But have you ever stopped to wonder why God gave you children? And what you should be doing with those children? What do children really need? Now I'm going to give you 8 things that children need to have. This is not an exhaustive list, and nor is this list in any order of significance. In other words, number 1 isn't the most significant one, but I can't give it to you all one time, so I have to break it down. The first thing you must understand with your child is you do not own that child. And I know that sounds hard. You say that came out of my womb or that's my seed. Yes. But it's a gift given to you by God with the intent that you would give the gift back to the Lord. And you say, how do I give him back to the Lord? By christening or baby dedication? No. That really is just, that's a starting point, but you should train that child for the Lord. So what is it that children really need to be healthy, productive contributors to the human society? First of all, you need to teach your children boundaries. Children are not to be free. In other words, children don't run the show. Children need boundaries. They need to know when, how, why. And the why isn't questioning authority. If there is a why, it's an explanation. But children need boundaries. I find it interesting how many children don't have a set bedtime. I find it interesting how many children don't have a boundary for how often they use the screen, whether it's the phone or the iPad or the television. I find it interesting some children don't have a boundary for the amount of food that they eat. Parents just gorge them and gorge them and gorge them with food. Children need boundaries. Children need to know there is a difference between an adult and a child. Boundaries. Number 2, children need unconditional love. And this is where we get ourselves into trouble, you know. We love our children sometimes to death, literally to death. And by loving them to death, that's why we buy so much fast food, because we love them. We give them gifts and things that they should not really have. Or we give them liberties and freedoms that they should not have. So children need to be loved, but a love that's protective, not a love that's uncontrolled and undisciplined. Number 3, children need to be unconditionally accepted. You know what I find interesting in our culture, and maybe those of you listening who are not of the Bahamian culture, you may or may not have experienced this in your culture, but in our culture, children are accepted based on performance. Children are accepted based on skin color. One lighter, one darker. Children are embraced based on the type of hair. No, and I'm talking about children in the same household. Your child should be unconditionally loved and accepted by you as a parent. Very, very significant aspect of a child's life. Number 4, you need to train your children with spiritual training. You need to teach them spiritual truth. What I find interesting is we spend so much money investing in our children's body, with their clothing, and I'm not anti that, mind you. Their education, of course, I'm not against the education either. But we spend no time investing in their spiritual training. You need to train your children that they belong to God. You have to come to a realization that your child is going to answer to the Lord one day. You need to train your child to have an appreciation for who God is. Today, children aren't even engaged in any type of spiritual training outside of the home. Most Sunday schools are declining in numbers. Most of the Bible-centered clubs are declining in numbers. Most of the things that help us to train our children spiritually, parents don't have any interest in. I was at a little function the other day, and it was the king and queen of a particular school, and I thought it was a really cute event to have. But I sat there and I said to my wife, I wonder if these parents in the audience who spend all that money to get the dresses and the suits and the hairstyles and all the float parades together, do they put the same interest in training their children spiritually? So I'm not anti that, but spiritual training. You must give spiritual training to your children. Number 5, character development. Character development. I remind people that you may need an academic education to get a job, but you need good character to keep the job. When I examine the top 10 reasons why people lose their jobs, not one of those top 10 reasons had anything to do with the academic ability of the employee. It had everything to do with the moral and character conduct of the individual. I heard one executive make this statement. He said, we hire you for what we think you could do based on your resume, but we fire you for what you actually did. Character training. Your children, you should praise honesty over A's and B's. You should praise integrity over A's and B's. You should praise kindness and consideration and friendliness. Those characteristics should be praised over grades in your children. We're so focused on grades, but your child needs to have what we call character development training. Meanness should not be tolerated. Unkindness should not be tolerated. But for most of us, those things don't matter. Number 6, children need to have fun. But this is fun that is clean fun. Fun that is age appropriate. Children need to have fun. Number 7, children need, now watch this, children need stability in the mommy and the daddy's relationship. Now I'm quite aware in the culture we live in today, there's so many children that are born out of wedlock, and I fully understand that many of those children who are born out of wedlock, usually the mom and the dad hardly ever marry. But even if that is the situation, you still need to have a cordial, friendly, non-hostile relationship, because the child needs to see that. Where you have a mom and a dad who are married and the children are living with you, you and your husband's relationship, you and your wife's relationship really is the most guaranteed security for those children. Because those same children of yours, regardless of their ages, go to school, they watch television, they hear stories of how their friends or their peers, their parents left and got a divorce and separated. And they hear these things and they wonder, will mommy and daddy separate? The stability of that mom and dad is so essential. And where the mom and the dad are husband and wife, your marriage is so significant to the stability of the mind, body, soul, and spirit of your children. So you need a stable relationship. And even in a situation where you're not living together as mom and dad for the child, you need to be cordial, not speaking evil of the other person, not showing any kind of hostility in front of the child. Number 8, the children need discipline. Now, what is discipline? Discipline is the ability to bring your child to do what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and how it needs to be done. Children need to be disciplined. Disciplined to obey, what I call immediate obedience. So often we have this bad habit. It's more pronounced among women than it is among men. Most children know, I don't really have to move until mommy's voice gets to this level. And they know by the time mommy says it the third time, I better be ready because now I have to move. That's not discipline. Children should be disciplined to respond right away. Children should be disciplined to know when to do and what not to do. Things that are kind of obvious. Discipline enough to make the bed when it's appropriate. Discipline enough to put the dishes in the sink when it's appropriate. That's the kind of discipline we're talking about. Discipline to know to sweep the porch. Not in your time, but in a time frame that's given. So children need discipline. And then number 9, children need engaging parents. Often what happens is, if you take away the television, or what I call the screens, I prefer to say, which would be the television, the iPad, the telephones, if you take those away, most parents aren't engaged. And what we have done in this generation is we have actually allowed those things to take our place, because they take the children's attention off of us. And I do agree, we all need breaks from our children. But are you engaged? Those of you that have housekeepers, and those who take your children to the nursery, and I'm not anti any of those two things. I do want you to know, often your housekeeper spends more quality time with your children than you. Often the school teacher has more of an impact on your child than you, because by the time you get home and have to do all those other things, and I know it's a lot, you realize that many parents aren't engaged. And I know when we come home, we're exhausted, you might be tired and busy, but children need engaging parents. Are you engaging? Are you aware that one day you're going to answer to the God of the universe for how you rear your children? Are you aware that you're going to answer in this time for how you rear your children? When children go out and behave appropriately, you get the credit. When your children go out and behave inappropriately, you get the blame. So there's accountability in this arena, and there's accountability in the end when you stand before the Lord. Children were given to you by God so you can train them to give back to Him. And it doesn't mean that they have to be missionaries and preachers. No, it means that they are God-centered, passionate people who love the Lord Jesus and use their skills and abilities and resources to build His kingdom as they build their lives. And remember, if you truly love your child has a life after this life. And it is foolish to say that you love your child and not prepare your child for the next life. In the next life, there's a heaven and there's a hell. And I pray that as a parent who loves your child, that you would make every effort to rear your child so he or she would bring honor to the Lord, honor to you and your family's name, and be an asset to society. Love those children in the appropriate ways.